Good evening, everybody. There's a lot going on in the news today. I'm just getting down and getting settled for the evening, so I'm just gonna go over a few things that's happening. There's a huge chemical fire happened out there at the Biolabs facility in Conyers, Georgia. The neighborhood was forced to evacuate, and the residents were told to go into the house and um, close their windows because there was a huge chemical fire out there in Conyers, Georgia. This was right outside of Atlanta. So they probably have it contained, but um, we need to, I haven't figured out how that fire started, but I know earlier today I saw that it was a big explosion, and people were told to go into the house and close their windows because it is a chemical fire, or it was a chemical fire. So Israel has eliminated another Hezbollah leader named Nabil Kayouk. I think that's how you pronounce the name. In another Beirut bombing yesterday. Um, his death effectively knocked him out of the running to be Hassan Nasrallah's successor. So now the choices have been narrowed down to like two people now, which is one guy. He is the head of Hezbollah's executive council. His last name is Safadine. And then there's the Deputy Secretary General Naim Qassem. So those are the two people that are being considered to replace Hassan Nasrallah if Israel has not eliminated them too. So if not, then they will shortly they will be eliminated shortly probably. Um, it seems like Israel now is at this point they are trying to eliminate all of the Hezbollah and Hamas leadership because they have not ceased from striking Gaza. They're still attacking Gaza as well. Israel is fighting a war on 7 fronts now. It's Gaza, Syria, the Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, uh, Hezbollah in Lebanon. Uh, they're just being attacked on every side, and then they're going to have to deal with Iran eventually. Well, they're dealing with Iran through proxy wars, but Iran is going to enter into a direct conflict with Israel any day now. Um, so yeah, so those are the two people that are going to replace Hassan Nasrallah. But I doubt very seriously Israel is probably already has probably already killed him or is looking to kill him. So we'll see. But the UN World Food Program has started an operation to go into Ukraine to provide humanitarian aid. You know, they need food there because over 1 million people have been displaced because of the attacks from the Israeli forces. So, yeah, they're going in there to deliver humanitarian aid. But if you guys remember, and what's going on over in Gaza is that Israel was striking those humanitarian aid convoys because Hamas and Hezbollah were using those convoys as command centers. So that's the reason why Israel would strike those humanitarian aid delivery vehicles because there was Hezbollah and Hamas soldiers in those vehicles. So we'll see how that works with the World Food Program in Lebanon. But if anything like that goes down, best believe Israel is going to destroy those convoys. They said over 1 million people have been displaced because of the attacks in Lebanon. So those people need that aid. But if Hezbollah want to use them as human shields, then they're going to effectively cause the people that are displaced by this war to starve to death and be deprived of much needed assistance. So we'll see. But it's not looking too good. Um, Also, the Lebanese army, you know, if they come in there with those humanitarian trucks and then the Lebanese army hijack those trucks and take them and then start using them for command centers, that gives them another reason for Israel to attack those trucks and deprive the people of the aid that they need, food, you know, medicine, supplies, and things like that. So, and that's over 1 million people. in Lebanon that has been displaced. Hurricane Helene, as we know, touched down and caused major, massive death and destruction. So far, the death count is up at 60, but that's only the people that are accounted for. There are thousands of people across the southeastern United States who are not accounted for. They're still out there somewhere missing. Thousands of people across several states they have not found. They're still missing. So far the death toll has been 60, but that's not including the people who have not been found or accounted for. This is the Katrina of this century so far. But Katrina, we know, had like thousands of people who died during that hurricane down in New Orleans and down in the Louisiana area. But like I said, a lot of people during this hurricane have not been accounted for. So that death toll can rise because this hurricane, it was a category 4. Katrina was a category 5, but this hurricane caused massive damage and destruction across several states. So we'll see in the upcoming days just how much of a devastating toll that it had on our country. So also in there was 148 deaths due to torrential rain in Nepal um, that left hundreds of people stranded. I didn't hardly hear a lot of news about that, but there have been 148 deaths from a flood in Nepal that left hundreds stranded last week. So Israeli forces are fighting, on every side. Like I said, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen. But Israeli forces have done the most damage, and they have caused the most casualties. They're still trying to strike inside of Israel with rockets and missiles, but that Iron Dome and that David Sling is intercepting all of them. I'm just getting alerts back and forth saying how they have tried to, send strikes into Israel, and they have been unsuccessful. There have been minimal casualties, if any. So keep up the good fight, Israel, because God is definitely on the side of the Israeli army. What else, y'all? Oh, I forgot. There is another hurricane that is forming in the Atlantic, and no, 2 hurricanes. And these hurricanes will be Isaac and Joyce. And then after Isaac and Joyce, there will be Kirk and Leslie. So in the next probably week or so, we'll see what happens with these storms that are forming, and just prepare for the worst, but pray for the best. Man, we're really getting bombarded now. So, also, an Iran Revolutionary Guard was killed in the same blast that killed Hassan Nasrallah. So Iran is pretty irate at this point, and they are vowing revenge for the murder of one of their own. Like I said, this general, he was an Iran Revolutionary Guard general, and he was killed at the same time Hassan Nasrallah was killed in that Beirut bombing last Friday. So this stuff is no joke. Iran now is, they're vowing revenge because one of their own was killed during that blast that killed hundreds of Hezbollah military operatives and leadership. So, multiple people are dead after a plane crashed in Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina. Again, multiple people are dead during a single engine plane crash in Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina. That plane crashed into a wooded area near, and get this, the Wright Brothers National Memorial. The Wright Brothers National Memorial is where that plane crashed, in Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina. Isn't that's weird. That is weird. As we know, the Wright brothers were the ones who invented the airplane. Mm, mm, mm. Another harbinger, maybe? That is weird. I'm telling you, there's just a lot of strange occurrences happening. Um, give you guys an update on Mr. Combs' case, Sean Diddy Combs. Um, there's been another lawsuit by another lady who says she was forced to have an abortion from Mr. Combs and Mr. Combs' ex-girlfriend, which I don't know about all that. I believe it was a previous story or report that she accepted $50,000 to terminate the pregnancy. So that was not, that was something she agreed to do for money. So we'll see how that case goes. But it's just people coming out the woodwork with lawsuits now. Um, there is a lawyer saying he's representing over 50 clients who are now seeking to file civil suits against Mr. Combs. So these people are really looking to break this man. They're willing to take everything he has, including his freedom, his money, his freedom, his property, his everything, his family. You know, they're trying to just take everything from him at this point. Um, but if he takes his case to trial, his lawyer said that he is eager to testify on his own behalf. But if he takes this case to trial, a lot of witnesses will be called to testify as well. A lot of damage will be done to a lot of people if this case goes to trial. A lot of evidence and information about rich and powerful associates and friends and colleagues of Mr. Combs will be disclosed, as well as a lot of damaging and embarrassing information about the victims themselves if this case goes to trial. So, a side note, the situation with Kid Cudi, the arson charge that the feds brought against Mr. Combs, um, that's a serious charge. That is a federal arson charge because if Mr. Combs ordered Kid Cudi's car to be blown up, they said it was a Molotov cocktail thrown into his car that caused fire damage, and the LA Fire Department corroborated Cassie's story, as well as Kid Cudi himself. I don't know how to pronounce Kid Cudi. I always call him Kid Cudi. Kid Cudi confirmed that yes, his car was blown up in his driveway. And Cassie said that someone threw a Molotov, or I think the fire investigators said somebody threw a Molotov cocktail into his car and caused the explosion. That's a serious charge. You know, a federal arson charge, because they consider that like sort of on the line of domestic terrorism. You're throwing bombs in people's cars. That's serious, and it can be easily proven. Because all they have to do is get Cassie on the stand, Kid Cudi, and the investigator who handled the fire department investigator who handled the arson case to confirm that it did in fact occur. That's a pretty easy charge to prove. So this case has some serious charges. Um, these are serious crimes that Mr. Combs is being accused of. And they can be easily proven. The sex trafficking, as long as they can prove that, there was a payment, there was a prostitute, and they were taken across state lines. I don't care if they flew, walked, drove, or whatever. If it was taken across, if the purpose to travel across state lines was to engage in illicit sex and prostitution, which is illegal, then that is enough evidence to get convicted under the Mann Act and for sex trafficking. So, another serious crime. So, we're looking at the fact that Mr. Diddy is 54 years old and he's facing football numbers, and he may possibly spend the rest of his life in prison. So, this is something that should not be taken lightly, and he needs to hire the best legal defense team that his money can buy at this point. With the civil suits, the same thing. He's going to spend upwards of, I would say, 10, 20, possibly even $50 million just on attorneys alone to fight these cases, the criminal and civil cases. So that can weigh heavy on, that can be very stressful in and of it. And so now the prosecutor has already made an announcement and said that Mr. Combs did not act alone. There were people that aided, assisted, and enabled the things that Mr. Combs has been charged with. And the prosecutor has said that there will be other indictments handed down in the near future. So a lot of these celebrities that attended those freak offs are very afraid. A lot of the high powered, rich elite, they are running scared right now. A lot of them are probably lawyering up because they almost know that they're going to be brought up on charges as co-conspirators or co-defendants. So, if this case goes to trial, um, a lot of people are going down with Diddy. And rightfully so if they assisted in any of this, which I do think that this case, in my opinion, I don't know. That arson is easy to prove, but all that other stuff, I don't know. So not so much. But he's really running a risk of spending the rest of his life in prison if he takes this case to trial. And not only that, a lot of people will be exposed, who attended those freak offs, who are on those videos. A lot, a lot of reputations and brands and relationships will be ruined. And some people may even go to prison behind this stuff. So, the employees, the associates, the friends, the colleagues, the sex workers, everybody, they better, if you know your role, then you better proceed accordingly. And if you have any type of culpability in this, you better go ahead and lawyer up. So, but this may be God's way of exposing this, the open and hidden wickedness of this evil elite, industry with these celebrities and these politicians and these preachers. Um, and the purpose would be to destroy Hollywood and just the whole celebrity culture and the way people idolize these people and look up to people. God will allow things to happen that will expose just how wicked and depraved and debaucherous these people really are and how they are guided by demonic spirits. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, this is a thing where, you can only get away with things and hide, the true nature of this industry for so long. And they have gotten away with, hiding this type of thing from the, public for so long. And I think now it's just time that God is going to expose everything, because then people will have a totally different outlook and opinion about that world and that culture and and that lifestyle. Like I said, the arson charge is probably going to easily be proven, and that alone is a serious charge. um, and with the feds, there is no parole, and you are going to have to give them 85% of whatever sentence they impose. So say, for instance, if you get 15 years, if you plead out to 15 years, you're going to serve 12 and a half of those years. 85%, that's 12 and a half to 13 years. That's what you're going to give them. Yeah. So these are some very serious charges. And that's why it's very important that Mr. Diddy's safety is something that should be a top priority, because with these charges, he runs the risk of either killing himself or being killed, because there are a lot of people in this situation that have a lot to lose, and they will do whatever they can and spend whatever money they need to spend in order to keep this case from going to trial and keep Mr. Diddy from disclosing a lot of very damaging information about these individuals. The witness tampering, I believe the witness tampering and the blowing up the cars and the access to private jets and the fact that Mr. Diddy is loaded with money, those are the factors that caused both judges to deny bail, um, and say that he poses a substantial flight risk. I think those are the main things that caused that. And then the young lady that said he had called her 54 times. And that could have been because he may have just called her to see just why her partner, her bandmate, why her bandmate decided to bring charges against him. It could be anything. When a person is desperate and their life is on the line and their freedom and their family and just they stand to lose so much, then I think he just went into panic mode and just trying to figure out are all of these things happening at this point in his life. So yeah, those are the things I think that was the reasoning behind the judges denying bond. It's just too many different factors. But my whole thing is that if Mr. Combs was going to run, if he was going to um, flee from the United States, he could have done that. He's had every opportunity to do that. So I just don't think that that's fair. I don't think it's reasonable. I don't care how much money a person has or who they are, how famous they are. At least give them a fair chance to fight these serious crimes that he's being accused of that can run the risk of him spending the rest of his remaining years in prison, incarcerated. I mean, it's only right. Give this man a fighting chance to prove his innocence if he's claiming that he's in fact innocent. So, he's offered to surrender his passports, surrender his properties, surrender his private jets. He's offered, $50 million cash, and also to subject himself to strict pretrial release restrictions such as random drug testing, limitations on his visitors and his movements, and to be placed on house arrest in order to be granted a bond. And they still denied it, which I think is pretty unreasonable in my opinion. I don't care who it is. Give people a chance to defend themselves. It's like they put him in a position that is almost nearly impossible for him to provide, to defend himself against all these civil and these criminal charges at this point. But yeah, it may also be that the feds want to keep him under a microscope to prevent him from homicide or suicide. They may want him to give up as many people possible and may offer him a plea deal to do so. We don't know. If the feds come with him up with a plea deal, that's probably going to be one of the things that he's going to have to do. He's going to have to give some people up in order to get a plea deal. And even if he gets 10 years, he's still going to have to give them about 8 on that 10. 7.5 to 8 years on that 10. No, he's going to have to give 8.5 years because I think it's 85%. 85% of 10 is 8.5 years. So that would make he would be about 62, 63 before he's released. That's on 10 years. So if he gets 20 years, he's going to have to give them, 18.5 years? That's a lot of time. Those are football numbers. And that's possibly a life sentence for him. But yeah, and a lot of people, you know what? If they come to Puffy with a plea deal of 15 to 20 years, he's going to feel like, hey, I ain't got nothing to lose. I'm going to give up whoever. If that's going to cause them to come with a better deal, then he's going to give up whoever he needs to give up. So this case is bigger than one man's perverted proclivities. This is about exposing an entire evil industry that, people got away with so much wickedness for a long time. And that evil industry, he's one of the most famous, most well-known faces of, the debauchery of Hollywood, especially Black Hollywood and rap music. He is the most famous, one of the most famous and the most richest Black Hollywood celebrity. So he's going to be used as an example. He will serve as an example for others. Um, Most of the time with rappers, they're not the most powerful people that run that industry or control that industry. In fact, they are controlled by the powerful people in that industry. And Diddy is just one of the people who are going to take a hard fall and will serve as an example, like I said. Because most rappers are just mascots of the Illuminati. They're mascots, they're pawns, and they're tools for the Illuminati. And so we're going to see, because we know the Illuminati is ultimately controlled and ruled by Satan. So God is, doing what he does. You can only get away with wickedness for so long before, God's wrath, rains down on everybody involved in this. So we just have to wait and see. But Diddy is not the only person that indulges in that lifestyle. He didn't invent it. He is not going to, it's not going to end with him. Like I said, he is not the worst person. He's a flawed human being, but there are a lot of other flawed human beings that also still currently indulge in the things that he's sitting in jail for right now. So I always believe in giving a person grace and mercy. I don't care who they are, even with, rapists and child molesters. Even they deserve God's grace and mercy. Unfortunately, I'd hate to even concede that fact, but that's just the fair thing, to say, that they do deserve God's grace and mercy. And in my opinion, Diddy deserves grace and mercy, because what did the Lord say? If you can't extend grace and mercy to an individual, then you will not receive. If you can't give it, you will not receive it. So that's where I am with that. I don't condone him. I don't take up for him, but I also understand that he was a part of an industry or a culture or a lifestyle that is so much different and set apart from regular mainstream people's lifestyle. So we have to understand that that industry is a level of evil that a lot of people can't even imagine. And once they do get exposed to it or indulge in it, they realize that they've signed up for way more than they expected or they intended to. So we'll see, y'all. I pray for, like I said, all the victims and Diddy and his children and his family, as well as the victims' families involved too, because I don't like to see anybody suffer. I don't like to see anybody, I don't pray for the downfall of people, and I don't like to see human beings go through hard trials. But if it does, if this is what it takes to make them a better person, to get them closer to God and for them to be saved, then, I am all for it, and I wish them the best, and ask God that he does step into the life of that individual and change their heart, change their mind, change their soul, change their whole way of life, and make them a new creature so that they can be saved when Jesus does decide to come back and, to rapture the church. So, that's the thing I'm at, with this whole thing. It's a spiritual message, y'all, because the time is winding down, and I was trying to look for the second moon today, but I didn't see it tonight. Rather, I didn't see the second moon, so I'm gonna look and see if there's some footage on the internet or some video on the internet. But I was so forward to looking to. I look so forward to seeing that moon tonight, but I didn't see it. So hopefully I'll see it tomorrow. So it's gonna be here for a few months with us. So yeah. All right, y'all. I will talk to you guys later on, and no, probably not later on. It's late. It's 9:40 my time, Central Standard Time. Probably tomorrow morning sometime or tomorrow afternoon. anything else happens, then I will talk to you then. Until then, be blessed.
Dr. Ghassan Abu Sitta is a plastic and reconstructive surgeon, and he's joining us live from Beirut. Dr. Abu Sitta, thank you so much for taking the time away from your very important work to tell us about it. So firstly, can you talk to us about the injuries that you've been treating after this unprecedented 12 days of attacks in Lebanon?
Unfortunately, again, children constitute a large part of the wounded. Again, these children are injured inside their homes when their homes have been targeted. So far, we have been receiving children who needed pediatric intensive care. And because of the shortage of pediatric intensive care beds, they've had to be sent from frontline hospitals in the south all the way back to Beirut. And again, having, worked in Gaza during the first 2 months of the genocide there, it's the same story. Families completely destroyed, multiple members of the same family injured. Yesterday, we were discussing trying to discharge one of our cases that we'd operated on, but we realized that they have no home to go back to because they were injured in that home. And so it's an almost identical pattern of injury: blast injuries, shrapnel, people being pulled from underneath the rubble. And again, the same issues that we were facing at the beginning of the war in Shifa. Where do you discharge the patients once you treat them, if where they came from was a destroyed house?
Dr. Abu Sitta, you are one of the world's leading specialists in reconstructive surgery and trauma-related injuries. I know you've worked in many war zones, including Gaza, over the past year that you are talking to us about, and you're saying that you're seeing similar injuries, blast injuries, shrapnel injuries. How do they compare to the other war zones that you've worked in?
It's this fixation with targeting homes. That's what made Gaza different from the very beginning, and what made and one of the things that are very significant about this war. Everybody that is coming to us with wounds is coming to us having been wounded when their houses were targeted, and therefore the disproportionate number of children and women that are being injured and are being killed during this war. There has been a huge number of children who have been killed, I think over 100 so far, and this is only day 5 or 6 of this war. Again, as I had said last year when I started out in Gaza, this feels like a war on children.
Yeah, and in fact, the UN's Agency for Children has called it a war on children, and they've said that Gaza is a graveyard for children. You've talked about, so you're saying that the majority of injuries are from people being injured in their homes, and then they have no homes to go to, and you're seeing this in Lebanon as well. You've talked about the shortage of facilities in Beirut. How are the healthcare facilities there holding up, given the state of the country, especially after the financial crisis there 5 years ago?
Well, as you know, it's been 4 years of financial collapse, with 90% of the currency having disappeared, and a third of the doctors and the nurses emigrating. And so we have an extremely fragile health system. But what's even more worrying over the last few days is that Israeli media outlets and pro-Israeli groups have been starting to circulate the same narrative that militarizes the health system. They've been talking about a Hezbollah-controlled Ministry of Health, the same narrative that they use to justify attacking Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital in Gaza, and then eventually turning Shifa Hospital into a mass grave, is now the ground is being laid for future attacks. And I had spent a day up in the south in Nabatieh with one of the frontline hospitals. And one of the trauma stabilization field hospitals in the south had been hit with a doctor and 7 paramedics being killed. And so we're beginning to see Israel also targeting the health system. And my worry is that they will do that. There were threats, Israeli threats, to the hospitals inside the southern suburb. And the Israelis have been warning these hospitals to evacuate. Again, it's almost like a textbook. You know, on the 12th of October last year, the doctors and the administrators of hospitals in Gaza were receiving phone calls from Israeli army officers saying that they had to evacuate the hospitals or else they would bear the responsibility for any lives lost. And again, now we're starting to hear similar stories.
Just lastly, Dr. Abu Sitta, how difficult is it for you to see the same thing being repeated? And after seeing what you have in Gaza, how do you feel that instead of the war ending, it only seems to be expanding?
You almost lose faith in humanity. At the end of the day, these bombs had been delivered to Israel during the genocide. So the bombs that the Israelis are using were given to it by the United States, by Germany, the United Kingdom, by its Western allies during the conduct of the genocide in Gaza, so that it can use them to further escalate the genocide in Gaza into a full-fledged regional war. And that's what's really morally repugnant about the conduct of these Western governments.
Dr. Ghassan Abu Sitta, thank you so much for joining us on Al Jazeera to talk about the work that you're doing.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.
Since the assassination of Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah, focus has shifted towards Iran, the organisation's leading ally, where in the country, anger has flowed into the streets.
I'm here to show my hatred for Israel. The Iranian nation is full of rage at the crimes and massacres that are taking place.
Yesterday, in a statement read out on television, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei vowed to retaliate and called on its allies.
It is obligatory for all Muslims to stand proudly with the people of Lebanon and Hezbollah and help them confront the usurping, cruel, and evil regime.
In Baghdad, Iraq, a majority Shiite country, a minute of silence was observed to pay homage to Nasrallah. But as soon as it was over, vitriol ensued. Despite this anger, experts say there is little point for Iran to go into an all-out war.
There is no point because there's clearly a disproportion of force. And above all, in the event of war between Israel and Iran, the United States will be forced to re-engage.
A war the international community wishes to avoid. The US has joined other nations in calling for a ceasefire in Lebanon, but it has also bolstered its military presence in the region.
I'll bring you our other top story this hour. Israel has attacked the Yemeni port city of Hodeidah. A wave of strikes hit an electricity plant and the Ras Isa seaport. The city is controlled by the Houthi group. It fired a missile towards Israel on Saturday and has pledged to continue its attacks until Israel's aggression on Lebanon and Gaza stops. I want to bring in Hossein Al-Bukhaiti. He's a journalist and political analyst. He joins us now from Sana'a. First of all, can you tell us about these attacks on Hodeidah? Where specifically have the Israelis been focusing their attacks today in Yemen?
It's been reported that Israeli has conducted more than 15 airstrikes. They have targeted Hodeidah main port and as well Ras Isa port. Ras Isa port is one of the main oil port of Yemen. That port is where Yemeni receiving their fuel from outside. And as well they have targeted one of the largest power station in Yemen, which is Al-Khatib power station, and as well Al-Hali power station in Hodeidah as well. And firefighters now are trying to put the fire out in those two power stations. And there are reports of one dead and several casualties in those latest attack against Yemen in Hodeidah.
Hossein, help us understand the significance of Hodeidah. This is really a key entry point for humanitarian aid to a country that has been suffering from malnutrition, starvation. The United Nations has warned of famine in several areas. What does it mean for Hodeidah to be bombed?
I believe this is the main goal of the Israeli regime, is to put pressure on the Yemeni people. Hodeidah port, as you say, is one of the most economic city for Yemen, and to target that port, it means that Israeli want or trying to close it, and as well targeting those power stations. This means it will affect only the Yemeni civilians, because Israeli, they know that they cannot actually target military installation or actually stop or preventing Yemeni from targeting Israel, because they know that Saudi, for example, they have conducted more than 250,000 airstrike. They couldn't stop the Yemeni army, and as well hundreds of attacks by the United States and the UK in the last several months. They could not stop. That's why I believe they will continue targeting civilian infrastructure that affect actually all Yemenis. But as well, I want to mention that Mohammed Abdel Salam, the spokesperson of Ansarullah, also known the Houthi, he said that those attacks actually will not stop or prevent or obstruct Yemeni from attacking the Zionist state of Israel, or from keeping or continuing to support the people of Lebanon and as well the people of Palestine.
And so tell us what the Houthis might do next.
I think, or I believe that it could be one of now the main target for Yemeni army is to target Israeli port, and as well to target Israeli offshore gas platform, because if they do so, this means it will actually affect and damage the Israeli regime. And as they targeted Yemeni oil infrastructure, I believe that this attack could target, as they say, those gas platforms. And I believe that could be in the coming hour that Yemeni will extend their attack against Israel, and it will not I don't believe that will be only with one missile or one drone. I think they will launch several of those missiles and drones at once, because they actually want to support the Palestinian people, and as well they want to stop the attack against Yemen.
Hussein, do you think they will? Do you think the Houthis will also focus on sort of strategic shipping lanes?
I mean, for the shipping lane, Yemeni army actually has successfully blocked the Red Sea in front of any Israeli-linked ship or ships that going toward Israel, and as well have formed a blockade against any company or shipping company that is dealing with Israel. As we remember that in the last attack, they have targeted an oil tanker that belonged to a Greek shipping company. That attack actually was because that shipping company, one of their ship has head to one of the Israeli regime port. And I think that Yemen could actually extend their attack not only against those shipping company, it could actually form a blockade against country that's actually dealing with Israel, like the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and maybe Jordan, because we know that the Israeli regime has actually avoided this blockade in the Red Sea by sending their ships toward the United Arab Emirates port, and then all the goods on those ships is transported by truck through United Arab Emirates and then Saudi Arabia and Jordan. That's why I believe one of those stages it could be for that blockade against a country that's actually helping Israeli to avoid the blockade.
Hussein, thank you very much. Hussein Al-Bukhaiti joining us from the capital of Yemen, Sana'a.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get latest news from Al Jazeera.
News now at 11 begins with breaking news tonight. Officials in North Carolina confirm multiple fatalities in a single-engine plane crash near the Wright Brothers National Memorial. It happened around 5 this evening in a wooded area near First Flight Airport. Miles Hood is live in North Carolina tonight with details. Miles, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Dana, I'm outside the Wright Brothers National Memorial Park here in Kill Devil Hills. It's where the First Flight Airport is a part of the complex within the national park. And I spoke with a Dare County Sheriff's deputy a few hours ago who told me that at the time there were still some people inside the park. Now, what we know about this tragic incident comes from officials with the National Park Service. They say that a single Around 5 p.m. earlier tonight, multiple people are dead as a result. Now, the crash started a fire that burned the plane. It was eventually put out by a local fire department. Now, National Park officials say that eyewitnesses saw the plane as it was descending, and one woman I spoke with on the phone says she saw it as she was driving to the store tonight.
Plane, it looked like it would have been like 2-passenger, really little plane, and at the beginning I thought he was really high, and all of a sudden he just went down a little too quick. But I thought, I'm no expert, but I've seen a lot of other planes land before, and this one particularly went down so quick that I thought that was too low.
The National Park officials have told me that the First Flight Airport is closed until further notice, and they've also announced that the Wright Brothers Memorial Park will be closed tomorrow. Live in Kill Devil Hills, I'm Miles Hood for 13 News Now.
All right, thanks so much, Miles. The NTSB is investigating the crash.
We're tracking other features in the tropics. In fact, we have a couple named storms out there. Joyce, likely just going to be a fish storm, turning up towards the north and the east. We have Isaac, which is a Category 1 hurricane, pushing towards the north and the west. But I think a feature that we'll have to pay close attention to next week is actually trying to get its act together across the western Caribbean. Right now, there's a 30% chance for development over the next 7 days as the atmosphere is rather conducive. We got warm waters in the western Caribbean, also low wind shear. So we'll have to check back in and see if this system does grow. But according to the National Hurricane Center, there's a 30% chance that we may see some development over the next 7 days.
With a raging wall of water coming down the river, Kathmandu didn't stand a chance. This weekend, 9 inches of rain fell on Nepal's capital, the worst downpour since 1970. Parts of this city of 1.5 million people have been wrecked. As well as the army, every policeman and woman in the country has been ordered to join the rescue. More than 3,000 people have been brought to safety. Where the water was too dangerous for a boat, rescue was by zipline.
What should we do now? This calamity has happened everywhere, not just to us, but it's a big thing that our lives have been saved.
The annual monsoon rains usually end in mid-September, but respite is several weeks late. And people say these floods are more extreme than in previous seasons. In this valley west of Kathmandu, the downpour triggered a lethal landslide. Families watched, hoping the rescue teams would find their loved ones alive. But mostly it was bodies they found in the mud.
Total as such 17 plus.
Only yesterday we recovered the dead bodies of 14 people. Today we recovered another 17.
The death toll's likely to rise as more than 40 people are missing. Major motorways connecting Kathmandu with the rest of the country are impassable due to landslides and damaged bridges. The Nepalese government has closed all schools for 3 days and told people not to travel. The scale of this disaster is only just emerging.
Storm Helene flooded swaths of southeastern United States as it moved inland Friday. In Tennessee, helicopters were sent to rescue over 50 people stranded on the roof of a hospital. One of the most powerful storms to hit the U.S. in recent years, Helene triggered catastrophic flooding. Millions of homes were left without power, and fatalities have climbed across 4 states. By early Friday, the National Hurricane Center downgraded Helene to a tropical depression with maximum sustained winds of 35 miles per hour. In North Carolina, officials ordered evacuations over concerns about an imminent dam failure at Lake Leore Dam. There were signs of erosion on one side of the structure. Officials later said engineers looked at the dam and determined it wasn't at risk. The energy firm that operates dams in the Carolinas opened floodgates to relieve pressure on nearby lakes. Before moving north through Georgia and into Tennessee and the Carolinas, Helene hit Florida's Big Bend region as a powerful Category 4 hurricane on Thursday night. In the city of South Pasadena, first responders came across houses on fire as they carried out a water rescue. The extent of the damage in Florida was clear in daylight. The coastal community of Steinhatchee was hit by a storm surge a wall of seawater pushed ashore by winds that was 8 to 10 feet high. Resident Ted Saylor lost his home in the storm.
This is the worst. Ain't nothing even come close to it. It floated my house, floated on my second piece of property, tore down their steel shed they had for parking their trailer under it. That's all we got is their trailer, I reckon.
Officials had pleaded with residents in Helene's path to heed evacuation orders, with National Hurricane Center Director Michael Brennan describing the storm surge as unsurvivable.
On the today, the T20 World Cup bandwagon has moved across to the West Indies. What can we expect from this?
Hello, I'm Alison Green, coming to you from Durban, South Africa. Today we have a special show.
Start with a report on India's shifting nuclear posture. The first time since India officially became a nuclear power.
Hello and welcome to First Post America. I'm Aaron Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Washington, D.C.
Joining me now, Brian Claypool, a criminal defense attorney. So, Brian, what Matt was just talking about, these so-called freak-offs, these were no secret. So he'd been openly bragging about these wild parties. You know, there's like sex parties, and it looks like, you know, there were probably lots of other things going on there, too. But he was bragging about this for, what, a couple of decades. Watch.
This is what you need to do. Women, beautiful women. We need alcohols.
Right.
Alcohols.
Right. Not just one alcohol.
Alcohols.
Right. Just different
Plurals.
blend. You need
Blends.
the ladies, you need the booze. Right.
Got to keep them there.
Right.
You need locks on the doors.
Okay, this is sounding kind of dangerous now.
It's a little kinky, but
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Brian, that was creepy, but what took the Fed so long to do something?
Hey, Laura, always great to be with you. Yeah, I think it's I'm in L.A., it's the Hollywood celebrity path to justice, where we simply look at a clip like that and we laugh and giggle about, oh, let's get alcohol, let's get drugs, let's get all these ladies at a party. You know, for years, P. Diddy's gotten a hall pass. He's actually created his own kingdom where he makes his own rules, and you got to follow his rules or you get penalized. And guess what, Laura? He's now in a federal penitentiary, and for the first time in his life, he's facing his own fate at the hands of somebody else. And I will tell you, Laura, I've done federal cases, that's not the place you want to be in federal court. 90% of federal criminal indictments brought down are pled out, right? A plea deal is brought. And of the only 10% left, 90% of those defendants that go to trial, they lose. So he is looking at a daunting uphill battle to fight these horrible charges.
Now, Brian, one of the DHS agents involved in this raid on his Miami mansion described what he saw inside the house, saying that, in my opinion, he's as bad as Epstein. These women are young, either barely legal or barely illegal. Brian, this sounds like he was a monster.
Yeah, Laura, I will tell you that this indictment was very detailed, by the way, too. Your viewers should know there were over 300 subpoenas served, over 50 witnesses interviewed. Why is that important? Because the federal prosecutors aren't going to be leveling an indictment like this unless they have ammunition and they have cause to bring it. And the core issue at this case, which the feds have to prove, which it's looking like they can, is that P. Diddy essentially controlled these women, that he threatened them with stopping the money that he was paying them, that he spiked their drinks with drugs. That's been alleged in the indictment. And that he basically told them, I'm going to ruin your life unless you engage in these freak-offs. And that's really what the prosecutors got to prove. And if you've got some victims coming forward to talk about that, you've got financial records that prove that, travel itinerary that proves that, P. Diddy has very little defense. And I got to tell you, Laura, if this guy wants to fight these charges, he's going to have to step up and walk into a courtroom and talk about it. If he doesn't testify in this case, he is dead on arrival.
Well, who else is on these tapes? I mean, will the tapes ever see the light of day? I mean, that's what everybody's talking about. Who else is there? It's like with the Epstein, his pleasure island. Who else? Who went? Who was there? What's the manifest? But Brian, chances 1 being least likely, 10 being most likely. Will we learn of other celebrities that were at these freak-offs?
Yeah, I think you've got an 8 or a 9 for a likelihood you're going to hear about it. Why? Because there are going to be more indictments coming down, Laura. That's an important point here, because he's being charged with racketeering and conspiracy. You're going to have, well, let's start on the inner circle. You're going to have former bodyguards. You can possibly have former musicians that he was with. You've got personal assistants that are going to be, they're already talking about this. Some of those are likely to be charged. And then guess what? If you've got some music moguls that are sending women over to these alleged freak-offs, then you've got some top people that are going to start crumbling too, because they're all part of what's called this criminal enterprise.
All right, Brian, always great to see you. Thank you so much.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Sean Diddy Combs is facing serious charges, including arson, as part of a broader criminal indictment. The charges stem from an alleged intended plot in 2011 after Diddy discovered that his ex-girlfriend, Cassie, had briefly dated fellow musician Kid Cudi during a rough patch in their relationship. According to newly revealed legal documents, Diddy allegedly orchestrated the armed kidnapping of an individual as part of a plan to break into Kid Cudi's home. The situation escalated when, just weeks later, Diddy's associate set fire to Kid Cudi's car. Prosecutors claim that Diddy's co-conspirators sliced open the convertible top of the car and used a Molotov cocktail to ignite the blaze. The fire was confirmed to be an act of arson by police and fire department records. Additionally, multiple witnesses are prepared to testify that Diddy bragged about his role in the destruction of the vehicle. While the legal documents don't explicitly name Kid Cudi, the timeline and details closely align with the allegations Cassie made in her 2023 sexual assault lawsuit against Diddy. In that lawsuit, Cassie recounted an incident in which Diddy, enraged over her brief relationship with Kid Cudi, told her he was going to blow up Cudi's car. Shortly after, Cudi's car exploded in his driveway, a fact confirmed by a spokesperson for the rapper. This alleged arson is one of several criminal acts Diddy is being charged with, as prosecutors aim to keep him in custody without bail, citing a dangerous pattern of behavior over the years.